She was biting her lip. Not nervously, but the way she does when she's texting something she probably shouldn't be. One leg crossed over the other, foot bouncing lightly. Her suitcase untouched beside her. Same one we took to Asheville last fall. The little green tag still dangling off the side that says, "Hands off." I bite. She always thought it was hilarious. I didn't. I was 6 seats away, behind a fake ficus and a guy who kept coughing into his jacket sleeve like he was hiding a grenade. But I had the perfect line of sight. It was like watching a movie where you already know the ending, but your stomach twists anyway. I could see her screen. Not everything, but enough. His name came up twice. Owen. I don't know an Owen. But apparently, she does. Pretty well, by the way her thumbs fluttered and paused like she was trying to word something just right. Probably something you can't unsay. And then, she smiled. That slow, quiet smile. Not a polite one. Not the kind you give a stranger. The kind she used to give me in bed when our legs were tangled and the world felt small. She looked up briefly. Not at me. Right through me. Past me. Like I was part of the background noise. Like the guy coughing or the screaming kid 2 gates over. I didn't even flinch. I wanted to see how far she'd go with it. Then she took out lipstick. Lipstick. To board a 2-hour domestic flight. She was getting ready for someone. And it sure as hell wasn't me. I pulled my hood over my head and stayed frozen, barely breathing, while she walked toward gate C-19. Alone. Calm. Confident. But she didn't know I had already seen the boarding pass that dropped from her bag 5 minutes earlier when she bent down to grab a tissue. 2 seats. Row 12. Owen. Ivy. Yeah, she was meeting him. And they were flying together. And the worst part? She never even looked up. I didn't stand up. I didn't call her name. I just sat there, perfectly still, with my coffee now cold in my hands, watching the woman I married glide through gate C-19 like she was walking into a daydream. The kind of daydream you don't wake up from unless something goes horribly wrong. She didn't know I was there. That's what gets me. We'd slept in the same bed that morning. She kissed my cheek on her way out and said, "Don't forget to feed Daisy." Like it was just another Thursday. I asked her if she wanted me to pick up dinner. She said she'd eat with her sister. But I guess Owen's cooking was on the menu instead. I followed her without moving a step. My body was still in the seat, but my mind was 10 paces behind her heels. I imagined what she'd do when he arrived. Would she run into his arms? Would she cry? Laugh? Pretend none of this was a big deal? I checked the time on the screen above the gate. The flight to Charlotte was delayed. 45 minutes. Plenty of time for her secret to stretch its legs. I watched her as she sat down again, this time further back, near the windows. She pulled out a book. The same one I bought her for our anniversary 2 months ago. The Lake House. She told me she hadn't started it yet because she didn't want to ruin the mood of the cover. But here she was, flipping through it like it was her favorite thing in the world. A man walked up. Not Owen. Just some random guy who glanced at the seat next to her, and then moved on. She didn't even blink. She was waiting, and I could tell the moment he arrived. It wasn't dramatic. No running. No hugging. No stupid movie music swelling in the background. Just a quiet, familiar nod. And then she smiled again. Not the wide one this time. This one was soft. Private. Like a secret handshake only the two of them knew. He sat beside her, and they didn't say anything at first. They just leaned into each other slowly, the way people do when this isn't their first time. His hand rested on her thigh for just a moment, barely noticeable. But I noticed. Then she closed the book. She leaned in and whispered something to him, and they both laughed. Not loud, but long. The kind of laugh that feels earned. Like it came after shared stories and late nights and love. Or whatever version of it she was selling him. I wanted to look away. I really did. But I couldn't. I just sat there like a damn statue, wondering if there was any part of her left that belonged to me. And then she pulled out her phone. I watched her scroll through her photos, showing him something. He grinned. She laughed again. And that's when I saw it. A picture of our dog, Daisy, on our couch. She was showing him my life like it was hers now. Like she'd cut me out and pasted him in. Same background. Same props. Just a different leading man. And I sat there in the same clothes I wore to kiss her goodbye that morning, wondering what else she'd taken without asking. You don't realize how fast someone can delete you until you watch them do it right in front of you. Not with malice. Not even with anger. Just with ease. She was showing Owen photos from our life like she had earned them all on her own. The living room I painted. The couch we argued about for 2 weeks before buying. The exact dog she begged for on her 31st birthday, swearing she'd walk her every morning, even though she never really did. And he was nodding along like he belonged in every frame. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it didn't matter. You don't need subtitles when the plot is this clear. The way she nudged his shoulder. The way he looked at her like she hung the damn moon. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear when he leaned in close. I knew those moves. I married those moves. And the cruelest part? They didn't even try to hide. It was like I didn't exist anymore. Not in her life, not in her memory, and definitely not in that airport terminal. She had already buried me under months of lies and inside jokes and hotel receipts I never saw. I kept wondering how long it had been going on. The signs had always been there, hadn't they? The sudden late nights. The weird coldness that crept into her voice like fog on glass. The way she'd flinch when I reached for her hand in the kitchen. I thought it was stress. Work. Life. Something fixable. Something human. But maybe I was the only one trying to fix anything. I remember one night 2 months ago. I was making pasta, and she came home late. She stood in the doorway, hair wet, smelling like hotel shampoo and someone else's cologne, though I told myself it was just her new co-worker's strong perfume. She smiled at me then, this thin, tired smile. The kind you give a stranger when they let you go ahead in line. And she said, "You didn't have to cook." I told her I wanted to. She said, "You're too nice to me." Now I understand what that meant. She wasn't being grateful. She was being guilty. Back in the terminal, I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, trying to slow down my breathing. I kept telling myself, don't cause a scene. Don't do something stupid. Don't become the guy security has to escort out. But my heart was screaming for justice, for a confrontation, for something. Because while she was giggling with her secret lover, I was unraveling like thread in a flame. Then I noticed something that nearly broke me. He had my hoodie. Not literally, but close enough. It was the same make, same brand, same damn color. I bought it last fall when she said I looked good in blue. She called it my cabin sweater. Said it made me look like the kind of guy who chops wood and writes poetry. And now here was this Owen guy, wearing his version of me, doing everything right that I apparently did wrong. I pulled out my phone and opened our shared calendar. She had marked today with a little heart emoji. The note just said, Sister's Day 2 hearts. I stared at that emoji until the screen dimmed. Then I pressed the power button and locked the phone like I was locking a door that would never open again. She wasn't just cheating. She wasn't just lying. She was replacing me in real time, and I was the only one who noticed. The intercom crackled above me, announcing a gate change I didn't even register. I was too busy watching my wife flirt with someone who wasn't supposed to exist. But it wasn't the laughter that hurt the most. It was how natural it all looked. How fluid. She wasn't sneaking glances or checking over her shoulder. She didn't have the posture of someone doing something wrong. That was the part that shattered me. She wasn't scared of being caught because in her head, there was no one left to catch her. I rubbed my eyes hard enough to see stars and tried to remind myself to breathe. My hands had started to go cold, not from fear, but from whatever happens when shock turns into awareness and awareness becomes something closer to grief. A quiet, stomach-deep kind of grief. The kind you don't cry through. The kind that just fills your lungs like wet cement. And then something strange happened. She got up. She picked up her bag, said something to Owen, and walked toward the bathroom. He stayed behind, leaning back with that smug, relaxed look like he had the world in his lap. And maybe he did. He had her, after all. I didn't think. I just moved. I got up, walked 3 rows down, and veered left. Not toward her, not toward him, but toward the seat she'd just vacated. The one next to Owen. Except I wasn't after him. I was after the tiny piece of paper she'd left behind. The boarding pass. It was wedged between the pages of the lake house she'd been pretending to read earlier. I grabbed it without hesitation, slid it into my jacket pocket, and walked right past him without saying a word. He didn't even glance at me. I ducked into the nearest restroom, locked myself in a stall, and unfolded the paper like it might bite me. Flight 4827. Charlotte. Gate C19. Boarding Group 2. Passenger 1, Ivy Callahan. Passenger 2, Owen F. Ridge. Seats, 12A, 12B. There it was. Proof. Tangible. Real. The name I married beside the name that was now erasing mine. And something about seeing it printed in black and white, 2 names together that didn't belong, made everything hit in full force. This wasn't casual. This wasn't some short fling or a one-time mistake. This was planned, coordinated, booked weeks in advance, probably. She'd packed, she'd lied, she'd kissed me goodbye and called it Sister's Day, and now she was flying off to some fantasy life where I was never part of the story. I slumped against the stall wall and let out this laugh, not the funny kind. The broken kind. The kind that leaks out when crying feels too dramatic, but silence isn't enough. The tile was cold against my back. My knees hurt. I felt stupid, pathetic, and more alone than I'd ever felt in my life. Because what do you do when the person you trust most rewrites your life without telling you? You sit in an airport bathroom, holding a stolen boarding pass, and realize your marriage ended 3 months ago. You just didn't get the memo. Eventually, I flushed the toilet out of habit, wiped my face with the sleeve of the hoodie she once said made me look like I tried too hard, and walked back out like I had a plan. I didn't, but I had the paper. That was enough for now. Owen was still there when I returned. Still calm, still sure of himself. But Ivy hadn't come back yet. Maybe she was fixing her makeup, or maybe she was texting him from inside to meet her. Either way, I didn't care. I sat 3 seats behind him this time, close enough to see the tag on his duffel bag. It had a hotel logo on it. One I recognized. One that was exactly 11 minutes from our house. The logo on Owen's duffel bag wasn't just familiar, it was personal. Harbor Pines Hotel. Ivy and I stayed there once during a snowstorm when the power went out at our place. We drank cheap wine in plastic cups, played cards on the floor, and fell asleep to the hum of the heater while the storm screamed outside. She told me she felt safe. Said being trapped with me made her realize how lucky she was. Now here was this guy, with a bag from the same hotel, sitting in the same airport as me, waiting to board the same flight as my wife. It didn't take a genius to do the math. He wasn't some new guy from out of town. He wasn't just a fling she picked up on a work trip. He'd been around. Close enough to stay within 11 minutes of our front porch. Close enough to walk Daisy, for all I knew. I couldn't stop staring at that bag. Something about it made everything feel too real, too rooted. Up until then, I could almost pretend this was some fever dream, some parallel universe version of my life that I accidentally wandered into. But that bag, that stupid little rectangle of canvas and leather, that was proof. That was permanence. And still, she hadn't come back yet. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. I checked the time obsessively. The flight had been reconfirmed. Gate C19. Boarding in 30. Group 2. That meant they were among the first to get on. Perfect for lovers who want the window seat. Romantic. Private. Clean break. I tried to imagine how she explained it all to him. Did she tell him I was abusive? Boring? Emotionally unavailable? Did she craft some tidy little version of herself? The misunderstood wife, the dreamer in a cage, the artist stifled by domesticity? Ivy had always been good with words. She could make an apology sound like a poem. I used to love that. Now it just made me sick. And then, like a director calling action, she appeared. Hair tucked behind one ear. A bottle of green juice in one hand. And the tiniest, most content smile on her face. She looked rested, relaxed, like this whole trip was just a weekend spa retreat. She leaned down and kissed Owen on the cheek. Not the lips, just the cheek. Casual, familiar, like they were already married. Then she handed him the juice, sat down, and pulled out her phone again. I watched her fingers dance across the screen. It didn't take long before his buzzed in response. They giggled. She put her head on his shoulder. I felt something tear in my chest. Not snap, not break. Tear. Slow. Long. Like peeling duct tape off skin. I wanted to stand up. Confront them. Say her name out loud. Watch her face turn white. I wanted to make her explain herself right there in front of everyone. Make her sweat. Make her cry. Make her feel something even remotely close to what I was feeling. But I didn't. Because here's the twisted part. Some part of me still loved her. Some part of me was still begging for her to look up. To catch my eye. To remember who I was. That part of me still thought she might choose me. And as stupid as it sounds, I thought maybe, if she saw me sitting there, if she realized the gravity of what she was doing, she'd panic. Maybe she'd stand up, run over, tell me it was a mistake, that it was just a breakdown, that she got confused, that she missed me. But she never looked up. They sat there for another 20 minutes, talking, laughing, looking at their phones, whispering things I'll never hear, planning a future I wasn't part of. And with every second, I felt myself fading. Not just from her life, from my own. I didn't even feel human anymore. Just a witness. A placeholder. A memory in the process of being deleted. Then boarding began. Group 1. They stood up, still smiling. Still unaware. And I, like an idiot, stood up too. Not to stop them. Not to speak. Just to follow. I wanted to know how far they'd go. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Because pain only becomes real when it's finished. And I wasn't done hurting yet. The line moved slow. Gate C19 was buzzing with the usual airport energy. Tired kids pulling their own backpacks. Business people juggling phones and boarding passes. A couple arguing softly near the window. All of it blurred around me. Nothing existed outside the small space between Ivy, Owen, and me. They stood in line together, laughing at something he said. She nudged him with her elbow like they'd done this 100 times. Like this wasn't a betrayal, but a routine. And I followed them. 3 steps behind. Not close enough to draw suspicion, but not far enough to lose them. Not that I could. It was like I was tethered to them. Like a ghost, or maybe a shadow of the man I used to be. I didn't blink. I didn't breathe deeply. I just watched. Consumed them with my eyes, memorizing every movement. Because part of me still didn't believe any of this was real. We moved slowly down the jet bridge, one metal step at a time, our footsteps muffled by the worn carpet and the dull roar of engines outside. The closer I got to the plane, the more something inside me started to shift. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, something focused. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was collecting. Every second they stood together, every whisper, every glance, it was all data. Evidence. I didn't know what for. I wasn't planning revenge. I wasn't going to blow up her life. Not yet. But I needed to know. Needed to see. Needed to understand just how easily I'd been replaced. They handed over their boarding passes, a synchronized motion, like they'd rehearsed it, and the flight attendant welcomed them aboard with a smile so bright I wanted to scream. She didn't know. No one here knew. Everyone just assumed they were a couple in love. And maybe they were. But what does that make me? I stood there frozen for a moment, still outside the plane's door, ticket in hand, heart jackhammering in my chest. I had no seat assigned to this flight. I wasn't even on the manifest. I wasn't supposed to be here. But I'd made it this far. And then, like the universe tipping its hand, the couple behind me tapped my shoulder and asked if I was going to move. Sir, the woman said. Are you boarding? I muttered something. I don't even remember what. My legs turned me around before my brain could. I walked back up the jet bridge slowly, my footsteps heavier than they'd ever felt. Like my body finally realized what my heart had been screaming for hours. She chose him. She walked away and didn't look back. Boarded a plane with someone who wasn't me. With our suitcase. With the scarf I gave her. With the book I wrote a note inside of. With a man who would sit in the seat I once filled and make her laugh in ways I apparently forgot how to. I returned to the terminal, back to my original seat across from where she first sat, and dropped into the chair like I was landing in my own grave. I stared at the now empty gate. The door had closed. The boarding bridge had retracted. And they were gone. Up in the sky, together. Probably holding hands. Probably joking about turbulence or picking out a movie. Probably planning what to do when they landed. Which hotel? Which dinner reservation? Which lie to tell next? I sat there, surrounded by strangers, clutching the folded boarding pass like a relic. A torn-up piece of paper with 2 names and one unspoken truth. You were never enough. It started to rain. Not hard. Just a slow, steady drizzle tapping against the windows like a metronome, matching the pace of my thoughts. That's when it finally hit me, truly hit me. There would be no confrontation. No screaming match. No dramatic breakup scene. Just silence. Just the slow, quiet death of a marriage that had already ended months ago. I was just the last one to leave the funeral. I don't remember how long I sat there after the gate closed. Could have been minutes. Could have been an hour. Time stops meaning anything when you've just watched your life walk down a jet bridge holding someone else's hand. The announcements blurred together. The faces around me changed. Flights left. Flights arrived. The sun dipped behind clouds. And still, I sat there, clutching a boarding pass that didn't belong to me, staring through the glass as raindrops streaked the window like slow, silent apologies. I kept thinking she'd text me. Some part of my brain, the delusional, fragile part, still believed I might get a message. Something simple, maybe even clever, like, Wi-Fi just kicked in, how's Daisy? Or Sister's Day turning into a spa night. Don't wait up. But there was nothing. No ping. No buzz. No breadcrumb trail of guilt. Just silence. I unlocked my phone and scrolled back through our texts. The last message she sent me was a selfie with her coffee, a dumb little duck face next to a foam leaf in a paper cup. Vanilla oat like always kiss mark, she wrote. That was 2 hours before I saw her laughing with Owen. I stared at that emoji for a long time. That stupid, lazy kiss. How many others had he seen? I opened our photo album next. Not because I wanted to torture myself, though I guess I did, but because I needed to remember what it looked like when she was mine. I needed proof that I hadn't imagined it all, that there was a time when she chose me without needing to be convinced. There we were, on the hiking trail near Maple Ridge, at the wedding in Vermont where we danced until midnight, on our old couch in mismatched pajamas, covered in popcorn. She looked happy, or at least good at pretending. And me? God, I looked like a man completely unaware he was standing on a trapdoor. And then I saw something I'd forgotten. A photo from last December, her birthday dinner. I had made reservations at her favorite Italian place. Took the whole day off work to decorate the house. I remembered spending an hour folding one of those cheesy paper crowns that said, Birthday Queen. I remembered the look on her face when she opened the box with the necklace, the one I spent weeks saving up for. She cried, said it was perfect, said I was perfect. But now, looking at that photo, something else hit me. She wasn't wearing her ring. Not then. Not at dinner. Not even in the photo I took after when she was blowing out candles. I hadn't noticed. Not once. But it was missing. Her left hand bare, resting casually on the table like it had been that way for a while. She'd already taken it off. The lie I was still living in. She'd already stepped out of it. That was the moment something inside me gave up. Not collapsed. Not shattered. But unhooked. Like an anchor that suddenly stopped dragging. I felt light. Empty. Not in the poetic sense. Just literally hollow. Like my body had forgotten what it was holding up. And that's when I saw the email. I wasn't even looking for it. I had pulled up my inbox to distract myself, to scroll through spam and newsletters and pretend I was part of the world again. But it was there, near the top. Subject, digital hotel receipt, Harbor Pines. Date, 3 nights ago. Guest, Ivy Callahan. Additional guest, Owen Ridge. Room, 204, King Deluxe Suite. Amenities, 2 breakfasts, 1 bottle Prosecco, room service, late checkout. I didn't even remember syncing her email to my tablet. But it was there. All of it. I stared at the receipt, then at her last text, then at my reflection in the blackened screen. It was so much worse than a single lie. It was a campaign. A quiet war. She had constructed an entire parallel life, brick by brick, while I was out here fixing gutters and folding laundry and scheduling vet appointments. And now I wasn't even an afterthought. I was the thing she escaped from. But the thing is, you don't come back from something like that. You don't undo it with an apology or a tearful confession. You don't burn your house down and expect the walls to forgive you. So I stood up. Not with anger. Not with clarity. Just done. I dropped the boarding pass into the nearest trash can and walked out of the terminal into the gray, miserable rain. No umbrella. No plan. Just me, soaked in the version of myself she no longer loved. I didn't go home. I didn't text her. I didn't even call my best friend, the one who warned me last summer that she was drifting. I didn't want pity. I didn't want advice. I wanted silence. Because for the first time in my life, I needed to hear myself breathe without her in the room. The rain followed me all the way back to the parking garage, where my car waited like an old friend who didn't ask questions. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, the windows fogging around me. The silence was full and thick and warm. For the first time in hours, I didn't feel like I was sinking. I felt still. There were no fireworks. No breakdown. No cinematic collapse. Just peace. And you know what's strange? That peace didn't come from forgiveness. Not for her. Not yet. Maybe not ever. It came from something simpler. The realization that I didn't have to carry it anymore. Not the doubt. Not the shame. Not the desperate need to fix what someone else had already let rot. I went home that night. Fed Daisy. Sat on the couch alone. She didn't call. She didn't text. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't hope she would. The next morning, I made coffee in silence. I stood in the kitchen barefoot, sunlight dripping through the blinds, and I just existed. Not as someone's husband. Not as someone's fool. Just a man. Breathing. Surviving. That weekend, I packed her things. Carefully, quietly. I didn't smash plates or rip photos. I didn't scroll through her texts again or reread old notes. I just folded, boxed, and let go. Every sweater, every book, every trace of the life we built. I honored it by not turning it into a war zone. Ivy never came back to explain herself. No dramatic apology. No confrontation. And maybe that was a gift. I didn't need answers. I had seen everything I needed to see. Instead, life started to move again, slowly, like thawing ice. I called my sister, took Daisy to the park, deleted our shared playlist, bought new bedsheets, ate dinner at the counter instead of in front of the TV. For the first time in years, I slept without waking up in a cold sweat. I didn't check her location, didn't stalk her socials, didn't ask mutual friends what she was doing. I let her go. And one Tuesday, about 6 weeks after the airport, I met someone new. No sparks flew. No violins played. But she laughed at my joke about overpriced scones, and I remember thinking, this doesn't have to hurt. She had kind eyes. A quiet way of listening. We didn't talk about exes or pain or betrayal. We talked about music. About hiking. About the way people ruin coffee with too much cream. I walked her to her car, said goodnight, and sat in mine with the faintest smile on my face. It wasn't fireworks, but it was something. So if you're reading this, if you've been lied to, left behind, made to feel like you were the last to know, let me say this. You are not broken. You are not disposable. You are not the leftover in someone else's story. You are the beginning of something better, something honest, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. I thought watching her walk away on that flight was the end of everything. But it turns out, it was just the layover. And my next destination? It's entirely mine to choose.